It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Lawrence assistant women's ice hockey coach, Coach Julia Dessart. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in college women's ice hockey?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that I wanted to coach college hockey specifically until I got the opportunity to coach at Lawrence. Um, I my head coach when I played in college was talking about maybe bringing me up to be his assistant coach after I graduated at CU. And then his plans changed and he got the job here at Lawrence. And so it was kind of just, I had already been offered the position with him at CU. And so he just kind of transferred it over to Lawrence and it worked out that way. But prior, I knew I wanted to stay in hockey in general, but I had no idea in which direction that was going to take me.
What was that experience like playing collegiate ice hockey for Colorado?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I don't know, the girls on the team were great. The hockey was great. I think ACHA, because it's not NCAA hockey, kind of gets a bad rap. Just it's club hockey, so it's not going to be as competitive. I feel like it's how a lot of people view it. But I mean, it is very competitive. I'm a competitive person, so I wouldn't have gone and played there if it wasn't going to be good hockey. So I had a lot of fun there, made a lot of good friends, and just played lots of good hockey. Yeah.
For you as a player, what was that experience putting on that ice hockey jersey?
Um, I don't know. What was it like to put on the jersey? It's been a minute since I put on the jersey. But I just like it got me excited. I loved being on the ice in general. I still do, but obviously it's a little bit different. But when I played, hockey was kind of my escape from the real world. So anytime I got to put on the jersey and go out for a game, I was just always amped up to represent the university and just go out and have a good time.
During your time, what were some of your collegiate accomplishments on the ice hockey?
So typically when I look back at my playing career, I don't necessarily look at like the accomplishments, but there are a few that stick out in my head. So my sophomore year, we won our conference, which sent us to nationals. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we did not get to go to nationals, so that was a little bit heartbreaking. Um, but that's the biggest one for me, just because that season, um, we as a team had a chip on our shoulder. Colorado hockey is just not really um, a threat to some of the bigger East Coast teams that have won year after year. And so the whole season we fought really hard and played really well together, and we won that conference championship. And we're really confident with the opportunity we had going into nationals. Um, so that was really exciting. Didn't happen, but as a team, we were really strong and confident in that. And then my senior year, same thing happened. We won our conference championship and we're able to go to nationals. I unfortunately wasn't able to play in either of those games. I had a season-ending concussion earlier in the season, and so I was in the stands for those games, which really sucked as a player, but it gave me a lot of different insight, which I think has helped me a lot as a coach now. But yeah, those are the two things that really stand out to me is like our conference wins and our bids to the national tournaments.
What was that transition like for you going from being a player to getting into coaching?
It was interesting, definitely difficult just because I'd never really been in that space before as a coach. But at the same time, I stayed in hockey, and hockey is what I grew up knowing and grew up being a part of. And so just kind of transitioning from one side of it to the other was, um, it was seamless in some ways, and then it was a little bit more rocky in others. But I had a really good support system. The girls here at Lawrence have um, helped me a ton in like they give feedback, I ask questions. I think it's a really good setup with the group of girls that we have, as well as my coach and all the coaches that work at Lawrence and we work with are really good. They know that I'm newer into coaching, and so they're always able to answer questions if I have them. And I'm always looking for opportunities to learn. So in general, I think the transition was pretty good. But of course, you have your rocky bits here and there when you're starting anything new. So.
What was that experience like for you coming to Lawrence to become the assistant women's ice hockey coach?
It was interesting. So I grew up and lived my entire life in Colorado, and I love Colorado more than anything else, really. And so the biggest thing for me was that move from Colorado to Wisconsin, just because I kind of was leaving all of my friends and coming somewhere completely new without really the support system that I had in Colorado. Um, but in general, it was. It was good.
What was that experience like coming and joining Coach Kevin's team and being a part of the coaching staff?
Like I said earlier, it was pretty easy with the support system that I had in the coaching realm. I mean, Kevin, as you know, is my father as well, and so I was able to ask questions without kind of that sense of, oh, I'm only the assistant coach. Like I shouldn't maybe have these I maybe shouldn't bring this up to the head coach. It might not be important. Just because of the relationship that I have with him. I wasn't ever afraid to ask questions. He wasn't ever afraid to tell me I had stupid questions or anything like that. And so that transition was really not bad at all. And I'm super grateful for the help and everything that he's given me the last 2 years.
Of course, what is that experience like having a father-daughter relationship on the rink and getting to coach alongside your father?
It's good most of the time. I love him as a person, as a coach, as my dad. He has been my coach in hockey since I can really remember. And he coached me in college as well. And so I kind of grew up with his coaching style. And so I understand it both on the ice as well as um, he wasn't a car coach by any means, but just having conversations about hockey with him at home helped me to understand a little bit more the like thought process behind some of the things that he does. And so I kind of had a little bit of coaching insight before I even thought about coaching. But it's been really good because we blend really well. I understand his coaching experience and everything. And he knows how I work as well. So I think in general, we work really well together. We can bounce off each other, give new ideas, stuff like that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I don't think that it will be a forever thing. I don't think it should be. We both kind of need to go our separate ways eventually, but for now, it's been really good.
What is that feeling like for you getting to step onto that ice rink and getting to be in this ice box?
On the bench, it's been that was, I think, honestly, one of the easiest transitions for me going from playing to coaching, just because I've been on the bench my whole life and I was a captain for multiple years in my playing career, and so I know how to lead, or at least I think I do. My teammates seem to agree. So that transition onto the bench from a player to a coach or a coach, sorry, was pretty good just because I knew how to kind of interact with the players. I knew what I was looking for. I knew how to communicate. And so that was pretty nice and easy for me. Easy compared to other things. But it is also interesting because I think any coach will say one of the hardest things is that you can't go out there and do it for them. So I think that's been the hardest thing about being on the bench is that you're watching these things happen and you know what needs to happen and you know how to communicate it, but you have very little that you can actually do to go out. I mean, you can't go out and change it. So just kind of having that little like mental block a little bit in your head of like, you can only do so much.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've started to help to build for the Lawrence women's ice hockey program?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that we knew coming into the program that really needed to be, um, we needed to put a focus on is changing the culture a little bit. So we just finished up our fourth year as a program. And so the first 2 years were a little bit rocky. The women's hockey team did not win a single hockey game in their first 2 seasons of the program. And so Kevin and I came in to a winless program. And so um, when you look at that from a coaching perspective, it's not just necessarily the skill of the players on the ice. And we saw that the first practice that we were out there with them. We were putting them through drills and watching them play, and we were like, how has this team never won a game? Like the skills are there, the compete is there, everything is there that should be. And then we got to see them interact a little bit more, and it became apparent that culture was something that really needed to be worked on. And so I won't go into any specifics of things that needed to be focused on, but just in general, we made sure to do team bonding events that weren't like, okay, get into groups and do this activity because it has been scientifically proven that it's going to help improve culture. We do a lot of natural team bonding events. So just kind of getting the girls together, doing things outside of hockey, giving them a space to interact with each other as human beings and as people rather than just as hockey players. And so we've done events like we've done board game nights. We have done just movie nights where we bring in food and we have coloring books or whatnot, and they can do kind of whatever they want just as long as they're hanging out together in a space that isn't, it's not forced interaction, but kind of giving them the opportunity to learn about each other outside of the rink.
What are some of the typical game days like for you as a coach versus for your players?
Yeah, so for me, our typical games are at like 7 p.m., maybe anywhere between like 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. So the morning, it's just kind of making sure that everything on my end is done, making sure that game sheets are printed out, all of the um, administrative work for the game is figured out, making sure that our SID has everything he needs, the opposing team has been communicated with, stuff like that. And then just kind of getting to the rink early and making sure that the girls have everything they need ready for the game, tape, jerseys are laid out, stuff like that, making sure our manager knows her duties for the day as well. And honestly, just kind of being there. That's a lot of what pregame is for coaches. It's just kind of being there and ready to do something if someone needs it. And then like right before the game, coaches will talk together and just kind of figure out what needs to be said to the team, things we need to focus on. And sometimes we'll set specific goals for each period. We'll do blocked shots or turnovers, or sometimes we'll count number of passes, stuff like that, just so that the girls have set goals for each period so that we can look back between periods and say, okay, we're doing really well in making passes, which means that we have possession a good majority of the time. However, we need to get in more shot lanes and block more shots so that the other team isn't getting as many scoring opportunities and stuff like that. And then from a player perspective, I mean, if it's a Friday game, they've got class anytime from 8:30 to 4:30. And typically the Friday games are later ones, so they don't have to worry about missing any class. And then they just kind of do what they need to do, make sure they're eating and treating their bodies well before the game, and then get there 2.5 hours early, and then just kind of go through their pregame routine, whether that be um, hanging out with their teammates or doing their own individual stretches, and then they do their team warm up and then on ice warm up, and then they're ready to go typically. So yeah, we try and like obviously as any team does, we have our team pregame warm up and stuff like that. But outside of those set times and set things that need to be done, we let them do their own thing. Everybody has their own routine that they like to go through, so trying to not mess with that as much as possible.
Of course, who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against each week?
Sorry, you said who are some of them? So in our conference, we've got Lake Forest, Aurora, Adrian, Dubuque, Shrine, St. Norbert. There's more. Oh, Concordia. I think there's one more that I'm forgetting. But some of our so as a team in our fourth year, we're still getting up there in who we compete with. But in general, I think our compete level has increased insanely over the last 2 years. And I think the biggest game that goes to show that is our last two games against Adrian College in our conference tournament. We held them to 1-goal games for both of them up until the last like 2 to 5 minutes of each game. So it was a 2-1 game the first game, and then a 1-0 game the second game, going into the last 5 minutes of the game. And to put that into perspective, when we first played Adrian, when Kevin and I came in, it was a 14-0 loss. So I think over the last 2 years, we've done a lot of good things that haven't necessarily resulted in the wins on the scoreboard. But those games against Adrian, I think, showed everybody that matters really what we can do. That the girls now, if they didn't before, they have seen that the work that they've put in does actually make a difference. And like, I think everyone knew that we were in the game the whole time. And it was just unfortunate that the final scores didn't necessarily reflect that. But again, like for the people that it actually matters to, we know how the games actually went. And so just kind of, I think the last weekend against Adrian definitely helped flip a switch a little bit in some of our players' minds. So that was really awesome.
What is that home game atmosphere like when teams like Adrian College comes to home versus going away to Lake Forest or Trinity?
Yeah, so home games are actually a lot of fun. We recently Lawrence started up their pep band again, and so they came to a couple of our games, which was a lot of fun. It just really gets the whole atmosphere up and everybody excited for the games. And one thing that we're super proud of as well is that we have one of the highest attendance records in our conference. And so just having lots of people there to support the girls on the ice is a lot of fun. And even when we weren't necessarily winning a whole lot of games, we still had that support. And so just to not just from a coaching perspective, but from a player's perspective, knowing that you have people there that are supporting you and know the work that you're putting in, and to see that in the stands is incredible.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes? And as a coach, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Yeah, so the recruiting process, we aren't able to reach out or be in contact with anyone until June of their between sophomore and junior year, so between second and third year of high school. So before that, it's just kind of, I mean, we get the emails. If they send them out, we just can't make contact with them. But after that, just kind of reaching out to girls, making sure they fill out our recruit form, sending video, preferably whole shift videos. It's really hard to get an idea of who a player is on the ice when they just send those like 10-second highlight clips of them scoring a goal. So I really like whole shift video so I can see who they are as a player. And then after that, just having a phone call, maybe getting them on campus if we're interested in them and them us, and then just kind of keeping in contact after that. And typically we like to have our roster set. So we just finished our 23-24 season. So for the 24-25 season, we would have liked to have our roster kind of set by the October timeframe. So just about a year before the season starts. Obviously that doesn't always work out that way. But that's kind of our goal for that. And then just making sure that the girls that are looking to be recruited by us are sending us that, like if they're going to showcases or tournaments or anything like that, making sure that they're sending us their schedules just so that, because video can only do so much, and we really want to see players in person. So just making sure that they're communicating with us if we're able to get out there and watch.
Of course, what is it like as a coach getting to see them put on that uniform for the first time as a freshman?
Oh, it's so exciting. One thing that we do as well is the rookie lap. So the first game for all of our first years, they go out and skate a lap for our on ice warm up for our first home game. And it's always like you can see that nobody really wants to do it because then they're out there all on their own. And what if they fall, whatever. But it's a really cool experience. I don't think I've seen a single first year put on a jersey and not be excited about it. And so that's really what it is just kind of like helping them to like keep their excitement up because yes, you're excited because it's your first game, but also it's your first college game and that's really scary sometimes. You don't quite know what to expect regardless of the level you played prior or the compete level in practice. A game is a game and that's a different situation. But it's really exciting to see them go from being excited about it to being in it, and just to see all those different emotions happening, and then also to see them go from that nervous first game person to like later in the season when they're absolutely killing it. It's really exciting to see.
Of course, for you as a coach, what is it like seeing them achieve those first milestones like the first goal, the first assist?
Oh, it's wonderful. I love watching it because the whole team gets excited for them. Um, that's honestly one of my favorite moments. One specifically from this year, we had a first year who didn't score a goal until her last game. She got injured the same game that she scored. But it was great to see her just shoot the puck. She's a defenseman who's a little bit more um, defensively minded. She doesn't always put herself out into the offensive zone all that often, but when she does it well. And this played right off of a face-off in our offensive zone, pulled back to a D, went D to D pass, and she took slap shot and went bar down. It was a beautiful play, and after that, she kept shooting from the point. And so just to see first of all, her excitement from scoring, the team's excitement from her scoring, but also to see the confidence after that change, even just in the next like 5-10 minutes of the game was insane just to see her realize that yeah, I can actually score at this level. So like, let's keep doing it and let's play a little bit more confidently. So I'm super excited to see her as well as a whole bunch of our other first years come back next year with a little bit more confidence.
What is it like as a coach seeing your seniors put on that uniform for the last time?
It's like it's definitely bittersweet. This season was the first time we had a multi-member class graduate. Last year we had our first senior graduate, and she was the only one from the team. And so this year it's our first full class. I think we're graduating 6 or 7. So a decently normal size senior class. But it was also the first time that the Lawrence women's hockey team has experienced that. And so it was really bittersweet to see them kind of realize it and be sad about it, but also go out and like give it all because they had nothing to save it for pretty much. And then afterwards, just lots of tears by everyone, but not all sad tears. Like happy about the season they had, happy about the team that they finished it with, stuff like that. So it's definitely a whole mix of emotions, but it's good to see them, I don't know, just come together and play one last time. And then, and one thing also going out of it is that, you know, with certain people, most of them, hopefully, you're not going to lose contact and you're going to be able to keep up on their lives afterwards too.
What's it like as a coach seeing them score those last goals, those last hat tricks?
Exciting. I mean, any goal, any hat trick is always exciting. I've never really thought about that because there's always an opportunity to score more. So it's never in my head, oh, that's the last goal that she'll ever score. It's always, all right, when's the next one coming? Or like, how do we move forward with that? How do we make more happen? So yeah, I don't really have a real answer for that.
As a coach, what's it like seeing those players go on to professional ice hockey and going playing in the PHL?
So I haven't had that opportunity yet, but just with the PWHL growing and happening this year, I'm super excited to see just the change in women's hockey and girls hockey in the next couple of years. I think that the mindset will be a little bit different for some people. I mean, up until recently, there hasn't been the opportunity for women to play hockey professionally unless they went over to Europe. And so I think that there will be a little bit of a mindset change in that, like, oh, there could be a future for me in this sport if I really love it and really work hard for it. So I think that that'll be excited to see just in the game in general. And if and when I ever coach someone who does go on to play professionally, that would mean, oh, that would be so cool. Just because to know that like you're coaching athletes that are good enough to go and play professionally and athletes that have that drive and have that nature to them, but also to know that you're helping them get there. I think that would be insanely rewarding.
What are some of your future plans for the Lawrence women's ice hockey program moving forward?
Just to continue growing, making sure that we're bringing in recruits that will bring the program up a step. That's what we're looking for, is players that will come in and be ready to compete right away and raise the level of their play as well as their teammates' play and the team in general. And so just making sure that we're always focused on being better because you can always be good, but the good teams that are content with being where they are never gonna get to the next level. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is bring the women's hockey team to that next level, to be able to compete with the St. Norbert's, Auroras, Adrians, and go on and win our conference tournament and go make a run at the national tournament as well.
What advice would you give those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college ice hockey?
Uh, don't get too hard on yourself. Your first year is really hard, regardless of how good of a player you are. Everything is different. For a good chunk of the girls, they're away from home for the first time, and that's a new experience in and of itself. But like I mentioned earlier, regardless of where you played and the speed of play prior or the speed of practice, games are a whole new situation. And so you may not be getting the playing time that you had hoped for, that you were looking for, stuff like that. But I think one of the biggest changes that you see as a coach is freshman to sophomore year, typically, at least, just because they've got that year under their belt and they're a little bit more confident in who they are as a player at that level, and they're more used to it. They've had a year to get used to the speed and everything like that. So freshman year, first year, I don't think really ever goes how people think it will, whether that be for the better or for the worse. So just making sure that they're staying in it for the right reasons. We all play hockey, or at least started playing hockey because we enjoyed it and we loved the sport. So just making sure that if they ever kind of get lost in that, oh, this sucks, this is hard, I'm not getting the playing time, go back to why they play the sport.
What advice would you give those college hockey players out there looking to go play professional ice hockey?
I think honestly kind of the same as what I just said about being a first year. Like don't forget about why you do it, but also that it's going to take a lot of work. Going and doing anything professionally is difficult. Like that step into the professional leagues from college hockey is going to be very different. It's a very different lifestyle. And so just making sure that you're prepared to put in more work than you are now, but also leading up to that transition and to get to that place where you might be able to play professionally. That's going to be a lot of work as well, like making sure that you're not just showing up for practice and team lifts and team meetings, but putting in extra work outside of that, doing your own lifts, getting on the ice as often as you can, talking to coaches, looking at film, stuff like that. Just making sure that you're kind of a step ahead, just to get yourself to that position to be able to play professionally and get to that next level.
What advice would you give those players looking to get into coaching after their playing career like you have?
Make connections, talk to people whenever you get the chance. I think in most professional worlds, connections are really what get you in the door most of the time. Obviously, qualifications and everything are really important, but it is a lot about who you know. And so just making sure that you're putting yourself out there, you're talking to coaches, you're putting it out there to the coaches that you're talking to that you might be interested. But I think specifically, one of the best moves from a player to a coach, if that's something that someone wants to do, would be talking to your coaches about it, and having those conversations about like what it actually takes and what they're looking for as a player. Because as a player, sometimes you don't understand that coaching isn't just on the ice. It's not just on the bench. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background. And so understanding that it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes you're stuck in an office all day. But it really is worth it. So again, my advice for a player wanting to coach is just to make those connections and put yourself out there.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the team at?
So I don't have a public social media presence. I like to keep my personal life personal. However, the Lawrence women's hockey team does have an Instagram and I believe a Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, so I couldn't verify that. Let me look at what the Instagram is. I believe it's just LU Women's Hockey, but I will. Yes, LU Women's Hockey on Instagram. Let me see if we have a Facebook. One of our players runs our social media, so that is why I'm not quite in touch with all of this. We do also have a Facebook.
Thank
So
you
we
again.
have LU Women's Hockey on Instagram and Facebook, and I will let you know about Twitter.
Thank you again, Coach Julia Dessart, for your interview and best of luck in your future as the Lawrence Assistant Women's Ice Hockey Coach.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for your interview and best of luck in your future.
Thank you, you too.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.